It's true when they say music is a channel to summon something really dark, just like we've seen in some movies, including its other vices: witchcraft, sorcery, devil worship, rituals. People talk about it like it's trendy now. But it's more than sage burning or cleansing, or whatever you've been told. I know that because I was at Ellen's 60th birthday, where I witnessed the most horrific experience of my life. The sad thing is, the world's divided. Some people still believe there's a good and bad side to witchcraft. After what I saw, I'm not sure that's true. Let me know in the comments what you think, or if you've ever experienced something that made you question it too. And if you know this goes deeper than most people want to admit, share this and subscribe. What happened that night wasn't entertainment. It was a ritual, and it was real. I wasn't supposed to be there. I've said that too many times now, and it still doesn't change anything. I didn't belong in that room. I didn't have a name that carried weight or a contract with a label. I was just part of the prep crew. Background. I helped with lighting for red carpets and private events. Freelance stuff no one remembers after the champagne dries. But 2 days before Ellen's birthday, I got a message from someone I'd worked with once. No greeting, no context. Just a wristband and a time 7 p.m. Saturday. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but the name on the envelope was mine, handwritten. I still have it. The paper smelled like cologne and printer ink, like it had just been sealed. I thought maybe someone was looking out for me. Maybe they liked my work. Maybe this was a weird industry thank you. That's how it always starts, right? You tell yourself there's a reason for it. Something you earned. I wish I had left it unopened. The party was at a private estate outside Calabasas. Gated, quiet, too clean. I remember the gravel. That's what hit me first. It didn't crunch under my shoes. It was packed too tight, like it had been glued into place. The air smelled like eucalyptus and bleach. There were no photographers, no press vans, not even a valet. Just a single man at the entrance with a tablet and a blank smile. When I showed him the band, he nodded once and let me through. No questions. Inside, everything looked normal at first. Perfect, even. Crystal trays, ambient jazz, waitstaff in uniform, soft candlelight that made everyone's skin look smooth. Ellen was walking around barefoot, hugging people too hard. She laughed the whole time. Her laugh didn't match the music. I stayed near the edges, close to the walls. That's always been my habit. I don't like being seen at these things. I'm good at listening, not performing. I recognized maybe 10 faces in that whole house, but they were faces everyone knows. People who don't show up unless they're told to. People who don't drink unless the glass comes from a specific hand. They were all there, and they were all quiet. Not solemn, just observant, like they were waiting for something. Beyonce arrived late. She didn't walk in with anyone. No team, no stylist hovering nearby. No security detail in a circle. Just her wearing a long dark dress that didn't look like anything I'd seen her wear before. It wasn't glamorous. It looked heavy. The fabric hung like it was damp. She didn't speak to anyone when she came in. No kisses, no greetings. She moved straight past the guests, through a set of double doors at the end of the main hall, and disappeared behind them without a word. No one followed. No one asked. That's when I started to feel it, the wrongness. It wasn't dramatic, nothing like the movies. It was just quiet, too quiet. I remember reaching for a glass of champagne and noticing my hand shake a little. Not from nerves, from something else. Like I'd stepped into the middle of a conversation that had started long before I arrived. I didn't see a single camera the entire night. Not one iPhone, not one flash. The place had rules, and everyone knew them. But no one spoke them out loud. That's how it works at this level. Nothing written, nothing recorded. Just memory and the hope that yours will fail fast enough to keep you safe. But mine didn't, and it all started with that invitation I never asked for. I stayed near the back. I always do. You see more from the edges. People think you're part of the wall. I hadn't even touched my glass yet when the first shift happened. It wasn't dramatic, just sudden. Like someone dimmed the energy, not the lights. The chatter didn't stop, but it thinned out. Like people were talking to fill space, not because they had anything to say. There was music playing, but no one was dancing. They were dressed like it was a celebration, but no one moved like they were happy to be there. The laughter was quiet, tight, like something rehearsed. I tried to tell myself it was just rich people being cold, but even that didn't sit right. It wasn't cold. It was tense, heavy. Like whatever this night was supposed to be hadn't started yet. And everyone could feel it pressing against the walls. Some people were holding hands, not in the way couples do. It was stranger than that. Long grips between people who weren't even looking at each other. Like they were part of something they couldn't speak about, just feel. There were no phones out. Not one. I scanned the room more than once just to be sure. That's when I realized I hadn't seen a single staff member except the waiters. No security. No crew. No team. Beyonce hadn't come back out. She'd gone through those double doors almost 30 minutes earlier, and no one had followed her. A few people glanced at the doors now, and then, but no one seemed curious. I wondered if I was the only one who noticed how strange that was. But maybe they weren't wondering. Maybe they already knew what came next. I moved down the hallway a little, just enough to get a better view. The doors were still shut. There was a faint vibration coming from the floor beneath them, like bass, but there was no music. Not out here. Ellen passed by me at one point. She didn't say anything, just smiled the way people smile at family during a funeral. She was barefoot, dragging her fingers along the wall as she walked, almost like she was feeling for something. Her shirt was loose and wrinkled. There was a faint smudge of something, ash or makeup or both, just below her neck. She looked tired but peaceful, like someone who had been waiting a long time for tonight. A man came out from the hallway behind the kitchen. Not a waiter. He was older, dark coat, eyes like glass. He didn't speak, just nodded once to someone standing by the fireplace. That was the first time I saw people start to move. Slowly, calmly. Like they'd been told without words it was time to go in. The double doors opened on their own. I didn't see who did it. Everyone filed in like they'd done it before. No instructions. No hesitation. Just a slow drift into something they'd all accepted long ago. I followed because I didn't know what else to do. You don't walk out of things like this without being noticed. Inside, the air was hotter. Not from the temperature, just from the silence. It felt like something had already happened, and we were walking into the space it left behind. At the center of the room was a small, raised platform. Nothing flashy, just a soft light overhead and a single microphone stand. There were no chairs, no screens, no backdrop, just that platform, and the understanding that something was about to be called forward. And we were all going to be there to hear it. Beyonce was already standing on the platform when the room settled. No announcement, no cue. Just her in that heavy black dress, looking like she'd been pulled from somewhere far and set down in the middle of us. She wasn't holding a mic, but her mouth moved like she was preparing to speak, or sing, or let something out. The sound came slowly, almost like a breath trying to find its shape. It wasn't a melody, just one long tone, deep, flat, and strained at the edges. You could feel it more than hear it. Something behind your ribs, something that made your feet go still. Then it started to split. Not in volume or pitch. It split inside itself. There was a second layer under the first one. It wasn't harmony. It wasn't human. Just a vibration that made my stomach tighten. And that's when I realized people around me had already closed their eyes. They weren't watching her. They were listening, like they knew what was coming. She didn't move like a performer. Her body shifted in these strange, stilted motions. Like her limbs were remembering directions out of order. Her face stayed blank. Her arms rose slow, bent at odd angles, like she was being shown how. It wasn't a performance. It felt like a process. The sound grew fuller, but the tension didn't lift. If anything, it thickened, the way heat sits in a closed room. I noticed my own breathing had slowed to match the rhythm in her voice, or whatever was speaking through it. I wasn't the only one. People around me were exhaling in time. I could hear it. A room full of people sensing with a sound they couldn't explain. She tilted her head once, like she was listening to something over her shoulder. And when she opened her mouth again, the voice that came through didn't match the motion. Her throat didn't move. Her chest didn't rise. But the sound kept coming. Drawn out, stretched like skin over bone. Then her jaw locked. Not clenched, just stuck. Her lips parted slightly, and she stayed that way, held open like a door no one had closed. And still, the tone came pouring through her. I looked around again, but no one reacted. One man placed a hand over his heart. A woman near the front had started to cry, quiet and steady, like this meant something to her. It finally hit me then. This wasn't new, this was tradition. She wasn't the star of the night. She was the gate. Whatever that sound was, whatever was being pulled into the room through her, it didn't belong to her, and it didn't feel unfamiliar to the people watching. There was no applause, no cues. Just that long, disjointed sound bleeding out through her mouth, and the quiet, awful feeling that something had arrived, not from behind the curtain, from somewhere much further than that. It didn't feel like a ritual. It felt like permission. And whatever they'd given it permission to do, it wasn't done yet. So let me ask this real quick. Would you have watched, like I did? Or would you have looked away and pretended it was just music? It didn't happen all at once. It started small, just a few people near the front, closing their eyes and gently rocking side to side. Then someone let out a soft hum, like they were echoing the sound in the room. It didn't match Beyonce's tone exactly. It was off by a half, beat, like they were trying to find it. Then another joined, then more. The swaying spread, slow rhythmic, heads bowed, eyes shut, hands at their sides or clasped in front of them. The sound coming out of her mouth didn't change, but the people around me had. They weren't watching anymore. They were participating, quietly, lovingly, like it was familiar to them. Like this was the part they'd been waiting for. I stood there, stiff and blinking, suddenly aware of how loud my own breathing had become. No one else seemed to notice the shift. Not the weight of the air, not the heat rising in the room, not the way the tone was digging into the space between sound and thought. I looked from person to person. Their mouths were moving, not words, just a quiet hum that mimicked the frequency pouring out of her. And they were swaying, all of them, perfectly out of sync, like a living field caught in the same wind. But I wasn't swaying, I wasn't humming. I was just standing, watching, still aware. At first I thought maybe I'd missed something. Maybe I wasn't close enough. Maybe you had to be up front. But the woman beside me, her hands were shaking. She wasn't scared. She was overcome. Like she'd finally felt something she'd been chasing her whole life. I looked into her face and saw tears sliding down her cheeks. She wasn't crying from fear. It was gratitude. That's when it hit me. They weren't just hearing the music. They were under it. And I wasn't. I couldn't feel whatever they were feeling. My body wouldn't move with the pull. The sound felt wrong to me, like static under the skin. But to them, it was peace. It was rapture. It was worship. And I was the only one not touched by it. For a second, I thought maybe I was broken. But the longer I stood there, unmoved, unswayed, the clearer it became. Whatever this thing was, it hadn't reached me. Or maybe it hadn't been allowed to. That thought settled in my chest like ice. Maybe it wasn't a question of feeling. Maybe it was permission. Maybe you had to give something first. Let something in. Agree to be used. And maybe I never had. Maybe the reason I was still awake in all of this, still grounded, was because I hadn't given my soul to it. The sound shifted again, and suddenly the room felt smaller. Closer, like the walls had leaned in a few feet while no one was looking. Beyonce's mouth moved slower now. Her arms hung at her sides. Her body was swaying too, but it looked different. She wasn't swaying with the others. Something was swaying her, like a weight had been tied to her spine and was being pulled gently back and forth. And then her head turned, not fully, just enough that I knew it wasn't accidental. Her chin lifted, her lips parted, her eyes, still glassy, found mine across the crowd. And for a split second, the sound in the room dropped. She didn't say anything, but her body stilled. The humming behind me didn't stop, but it dulled, like everyone else had lowered their volume to listen better. And in that moment, I felt it. Whatever had been speaking through her had noticed me. It wasn't a performance anymore. It was a room full of believers. And I was the only one still deciding. At some point, the humming faded. I didn't notice exactly when. It was like waking up from a nap you don't remember falling into. Just a slow drift back into stillness. No one clapped. No one spoke. Beyonce's body had gone still, her arms limp at her sides, her head slightly bowed like someone who'd been emptied. Then Ellen stepped forward, not from the crowd, from somewhere behind the light. I hadn't seen her for the last half hour. She placed one hand gently on Beyonce's shoulder and whispered something close to her ear. Beyonce didn't move. Her mouth hung slightly open, like it hadn't fully caught up yet. Like she was still waiting for permission to return to herself. Two people came up from the sides and took her by the arms, not roughly, carefully. Like lifting someone out of water who hadn't realized they were drowning. They walked her out of the room with slow, measured steps. Her feet dragged once. I still remember the sound of her heel brushing the floor. Everyone else remained where they were. Ellen turned to the room. She didn't say a word. She just gave this soft, satisfied smile, like a parent proud of a child for finally listening. Then she nodded once, almost imperceptibly. Whatever had just happened was finished. Or at least, that's what we were meant to believe. People began to move again. Quiet conversations resumed. Someone laughed too quickly. A waiter passed me with a tray of champagne, and for a moment, I forgot where I was. It was like the room had reset. But it hadn't. I made my way toward the hallway Beyonce had disappeared down. I don't know why. I wasn't thinking. My body moved before my thoughts caught up. I told myself I was looking for the restroom, for air, for an exit. Any lie would have worked, but I needed to know she was still real, that she was okay, that she'd come back as herself. I passed a curtained archway and heard a voice. Hers, soft, muted, speaking to no one. I slowed. Her words came out in fragments. Don't make me do it again. Then silence. Then humming. Not the kind from earlier. This was faint. Like a child trying to remember a tune in the dark. I didn't go in. As I turned to leave, someone tapped my elbow. I jumped. A woman in a navy dress I hadn't noticed all evening was standing behind me. Her face was blank, but her voice wasn't cold. Just flat. If you saw something, you didn't. She held out a folded piece of paper. I didn't take it. She tucked it into my jacket pocket anyway, and walked past me like nothing had happened. When I got home later that night, I opened it. Nothing printed. Just handwriting in tight black ink. She's not the only one they use. I wish I could say I threw it out, that I laughed, that I forgot. But I didn't. And the next morning, when I pulled up the footage of the party online, there wasn't any. No coverage, no leaks, no social media, not even a mention of it happening, like it had been swallowed, like we'd all agreed, in some unspoken way, not to remember it too clearly. And yet I did. I remembered everything. I've gone back and forth on whether to delete this. But if even one person hears it and feels the same thing I did, then it's worth it. Like, comment, subscribe, whatever helps it stay up, before someone decides it shouldn't. The worst part wasn't what I saw that night. It was how normal everything looked the day after. Emails, morning traffic, coffee in paper cups. I kept waiting for some ripple in the world, some fracture to show that what happened had left a mark. But nothing broke. The sun rose on time. News anchors laughed. Music played in cafes like there wasn't something still humming beneath it all. I didn't sleep that first night, or the second. I'd close my eyes and hear her voice. Not the song itself, but the shape of it. That bending, layered tone that never seemed to start from her throat. I heard it in appliances, streetlights, in my own breathing when the room got too quiet. And every time, my chest would tighten like something was still listening for me. I didn't talk about it. I tried. But the people I trusted most gave me that look. The kind that ends a conversation before it begins. One of them even laughed and said, "You probably just imagined it." Events like that can be overwhelming, but I didn't imagine it. I didn't imagine the humming, or the woman who gave me the note, or the way Beyonce's mouth moved after her voice had stopped. I started looking for signs. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't not. I went back to old performances, not just hers, others, big names, familiar stages, the Super Bowl, the Grammys, late night shows. I watched the lighting patterns, the choreography, the background vocals that never quite synced. There was a rhythm to it, a shape. Once you've heard it, you can't unhear it. I saw things I never noticed before, faint geometric patterns projected on the floor, certain hand movements, mirrored across artists who'd never worked together. The way the crowd moved at the same beat, at the same time, without knowing why. I think I would have gone mad if I didn't write it down. I started a private folder, no names, just screenshots, timestamps, colors, symbols. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and add something without remembering I'd seen it. I'd scroll back the next morning and realize I'd typed entire paragraphs with my screen brightness at 0. I stopped listening to music. I couldn't trust it. Anything could have been carrying that sound underneath. A tone, a hum, a frequency that waits for the right ears. And the silence didn't help either. Not from her, not from anyone. Beyonce disappeared for a while after the party. No press, no photos, no cryptic captions, just absence. Then she reappeared and everything looked fine. But she didn't look the same, not to me. Her voice in interviews was slower. The spaces between her words had changed. She blinked less, smiled tighter. It's hard to explain, but once you've seen someone emptied out, you never forget the shape they leave behind. I never heard from Ellen. I didn't expect to. But I noticed something. On the 1-year anniversary of her birthday, her team announced a short retreat, private, off-grid, no press allowed. Another spiritual reset. That's what they called it. I didn't tell anyone, but I marked the date anyway. I sat up that night and listened, not to music, just to the house, the power lines, my own breath. Sometimes I still think about the others in the room, the ones who swayed, who hummed, who didn't blink. I wonder what they felt, what they gave away, what they gained. And I wonder what's been following me since. Not in a haunted sense, just in the way a shadow always finds your feet when the light comes back on. I don't talk about it anymore. Not in full, not like this. Sometimes people bring up her name on the radio, at work in passing, and I just nod along like nothing catches in my throat. That's the trick. You learn how to leave it out of your face. You keep the weight in your stomach where it can rot quietly without anyone asking questions. I've watched people turn it into a joke. Rituals, sacrifices, the industry, it's all a meme now. Half believed and half forgotten. People post about it with laughing emojis like the humor protects them from how real it might be. I used to feel angry about that. Now I just feel tired. Let them laugh. It's easier than looking directly at something you can't undo. I haven't worked events since then. I don't go near shows, stages, anything that involves too many lights or speakers. I've taken jobs that keep me outside. Construction, long haul, security detail for people no one's ever heard of. I stopped needing to be near anything glamorous. Once you've seen what's behind the curtain, you stop looking for the spotlight. I tried once to write it all out. Not just the event, everything around it. The days after. The things I started seeing. The people who stopped answering my calls. But every time I got close to putting it into words, something pushed back. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't even fear. It was just this deep, slow knowing in my body that said, if you keep going, something will see you again. So I let it go, but the knowing didn't leave. It just got quieter, quieter and heavier. And now when I see her, on a screen at a launch, wherever they place her next, I wonder how much of her is still there. I wonder if she remembers that room, that sound, that moment the air pulled tight like a noose. Or if she only remembers what they let her keep. I've come to understand something. This wasn't an isolated thing. That party wasn't a one-time horror. It was a process, a ceremony, a checkpoint in something much larger. These people don't just climb to power. They're allowed in. They're invited. And when their turn comes, they open themselves up as the rest of us would never survive. That night, I stood in a room full of people who had already given themselves over. The humming, the swaying, the calm afterward. It wasn't peace, it was obedience. It was what happens after a soul has been signed off and filed away. I was the only one who didn't join them. And now I understand why they let me in. I wasn't chosen. I wasn't important. I was a control variable. They wanted to see what would happen if someone outside the current watched the current pull. If it would swallow me, if I'd hum too. I didn't. But I'm not proud of that. There's no victory in surviving something like that. Only distance. Only cold. You live the rest of your life half, watching everything, never fully here, never fully safe. And if you're wondering why I'm telling you this now, it's not to convince you. It's not even to warn you. It's just to say it out loud, finally, and let it land where it lands. Some people hear the music and move with it. Some people don't. But once you've heard that sound, you'll always feel the silence differently. And I do, every single day. I don't know what you believe. Maybe you think it's just art, just energy, just coincidence. Maybe that's easier, safer. But if you've ever been in a room where something shifts and no one else reacts, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. So tell me this, have you ever felt the air change and realized you were the only one still awake in it? Drop your story in the comments. I'll read every one. And if you felt even one part of this hit something real, then like this, share it and subscribe, because you might want to hear what's coming next.